The Compliance Perspectives podcast is sponsored by Case IQ, a global provider of whistleblowing case management and compliance solutions. Learn more at caseiq.com. Welcome to the Compliance Perspectives podcast. I'm Adam Turtletail from the Society of Corporate Compliance and Ethics in Healthcare Compliance Association. Joining us today from Chicago is Jordan Domash. Jordan is founder of Responsive, and today we're going to be talking about how compliance teams can use AI to help their work. Jordan, first, for a compliance team wanting to use AI to help their program, it's likely easy to have very lofty expectations. What's the reality, though?
Yeah, truly, there's truly an enormous potential for this technology. It's amazing. AI has an unbelievable potential to solve a wide number of problems, and you should have lofty expectations because of not just the potential today, but the potential that will only continue to grow as the technology improves as rapidly as it has been. Generative AI can parse dense regulations, it can draft policies, it can surface gaps, and it's just every day it's getting better and better. But I think even when you line up those lofty expectations that you should have, in reality, AI does have some limits, right? There are some potential issues that can come with using the technology. It's not perfect. It can hallucinate, as we've seen in the news. But I think for me, it really comes down to making sure you're focused on the right problem, having expectations specific for the use case that you're solving for, and but that doesn't necessarily diminish the potential of this technology.
It's inspiring to see all that the technology is capable of, but at the same time, there are risks, such as you point out, hallucinations. For example, it always hallucinates that I have a full head of hair. That I'm okay with, though. Kidding aside, when a team goes into an AI project, I imagine the key thing is to start with a goal like you would for any other project. What's the best way to define that goal so that a technologist can help ensure that they're meeting your objectives?
Yeah, and I agree. Like defining a goal, what problem you're trying to solve is the most important thing to do right at the start. But defining a goal is pretty different depending on how you're leveraging the technology. So are you building something yourself or partnering with external consultants or IT professionals internally, and you're building something from the ground up? Are you using a out of the box platform like ChatGPT or some general purpose chatbot, or are you licensing a software from a dedicated vendor that's really focused on solving these problems? And I think establishing a goal is going to be pretty different. Um, if you're using ChatGPT for a specific problem, it's really about setting a goal and then iteratively testing the output that you get to make sure that the output aligns to your expectations. When you set a goal specifically when licensing products, technologies from a vendor, I think about the goal as what are the outcomes that you're trying to derive, but then also what are the things that you want to detect to make sure that the product is meeting your needs along the way. And so the goal setting process looks pretty different depending on the path that you're embarking on.
Those are two great points. That the goal, one, will vary based on how you're approaching it and what you're using for a vendor, but also that, secondly, it's an iterative approach, which leads to the question, as the process evolves and the solution gets developed, what should the compliance team be doing to help it along?
Yeah. So first of all, you've got your goal in place, which is often results and outcome oriented. Then you want to really think about the workflow. What are the steps with how you're going to be engaging with the output of the artificial intelligence solution? And so, we build regulatory change management software. So it's things like horizon scanning, research, requirements extraction, and a whole bunch of workflows around that. And so a lot of the times our customers, when they're deploying our technology, they think about each module uh, individually, right? So when they deploy our horizon scanning module and they get alerts on regulatory changes, which embeds artificial intelligence in the process, they're often thinking about, okay, who should review this alert first? Should we be handing it next to a domain expert in a particular function who's going to know what the specific practical processes and requirements are for that individual team? And so the workflow is very specific to even the narrow module as part of the broader solution. So you've got your goal, you've got some established workflows, and then it's an evaluation plan. So uh, you get the first iteration of this AI enabled solution. You want to make sure that you're achieving your goals, you're getting the results that you expect. If we go back to the example of a Horizon scanner, you're getting pushed notifications of new regulations that are relevant to your organization, and potentially going back in time. So you know the alerts that you should have gotten over the last 3 months, the last 6 months. Let's double check to make sure that you had gotten the alerts that you would have expected going back in time instead of waiting 6 months to see what happens in the future. You should also be evaluating any potential failure modes. So things that don't look as expected. And I would create, as part of your goal setting process, a set of tests that you will use during the implementation process to evaluate the solution on a variety of different vectors.
Your comment about checking against past data leads to a question around the fact that AI needs to be trained on data. What should the compliance team do to ensure that the data that it's training on is actually going to be helpful and help get the outcome that you're looking for?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'll go back to my framework on the different types of projects that you could have, whether you're building something from scratch, licensing something from a vendor, or using ChatGPT out of the box. Um, if you're licensing something from a vendor, they should, depending on the problem, they often should be the ones that are responsible for gathering the data. A lot of times they're building solutions that are not 100% unique to your organization. Maybe they're designed for your peers, right? Organizations similar to yours. And they should have a team on staff that is generating a set of source material, test data, evaluation data, and you shouldn't necessarily have to train the model. The model should be part of what you're buying, is not just the technology solution, not just the workflow, but a pre-trained model that requires less work from you, so you get something that is effective quickly out of the box. And the data that you're focused on is, how do I make sure to evaluate the solution in the context of my unique needs? Granted, if you're building something from scratch, you've got a unique business problem, um, then you might actually need to develop a data set. And it's hard to speak in generalities around what that data set needs to look like, because it's really specific to the problem that you're trying to solve. And so I would go back to, when you start the project, you define the use case, you set some goals, you define what the outcomes you want to deliver towards. Oftentimes, a part of that, there will be a data gathering exercise that could be used to train the model, or it could also be used to evaluate the output of the model, but it's going to be very specific to that use case.
That's a good reminder to make sure the data really is the data that you need. Now, once the AI solution is developed, what should the team do on an ongoing basis to ensure that it's working properly?
Yeah, I think one is, oftentimes these projects are cross organization. And so you should be getting feedback. You should have someone on the team who's responsible for evaluating the performance of the solution across the multiple use cases that might be deployed for, and across the multiple teams, people, functions that might be using it. And so one is a conscious process to evaluate the quality of the output, especially along the lines of the goals you had outlined up front. Um, the second thing is really thinking about how you can critically evaluate quantitatively the value of the solution. And again, that's very use case specific. But these are very, AI is often a very data oriented problem. You're taking large data sets, transforming it to solve business problems. And a lot of times your vendor should have, if you're procuring a solution from a vendor, should have tools and technologies and reports that allow you to critically evaluate the success of that solution against common metrics that their customers would be wanting to use to evaluate. Again, if you're building something from scratch, that's very possible, and these tools are um, they enable you to build solutions, solving important problems quicker than you could have before these technologies were available. But again, the process to making sure that the solution is working properly is going to be very specific to that tool that's being developed.
Well, Jordan, thank you so much for sharing insights into how compliance teams can ensure that their AI efforts are productive. I want to thank all of you for taking the time to listen. I'm Adam Turtletop from SCCE and HCCA. I hope we're able to expand your compliance perspective.